world is on fire with topics like wealth inequality, incomes not keeping up, and wage slavery. Many of the proposed solutions to these problems disregard the core of this problem. Asset ownership is the key differentiating factor in the widening of the wealth gap. Even if you confiscated all of the wealth from the current wealthy and distributed it evenly to everyone, as a result of thoughts, actions, and habits, it would not take long for the wealth to find its way back into the hands of those with the mind to focus on assets. Do you want to get in on the secrets that the rich already know about? I'll let you in on the big secret later in the video. I want to encourage you not to look at yourself as a victim, but to put in the work to earn your victories. I seek to empower you with a mental framework from which you could start from zero and work your way up into transcending your circumstances and rising to take your place that you will earn through radically different thoughts and actions from your peers. Here's an overview of the framework. Phase 1 is the survival phase. You're fighting to survive, gain basic skills, work hard, and hone your spending, and figure out how to live on as little as possible. The second is the utility phase. You prioritize your spending in a way to better your life intentionally. The third is the subsistence phase. This is where most middle-class families stop. Fourth is the transition phase. This is where the real power is. Step 5 is the thriving phase, where you have increased personal responsibility. And step 6 is the handoff phase. This is where you get to hand off your influence and provide influence to the society as a whole. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to stick with the first 3 phases, which represent the vast majority of people in the United States. If you're interested in a walkthrough of the last 3 phases, type transition in the comments section below. If I get enough demand for it, I'll make it happen for you. Let's start with the survival phase. First of all, this phase sucks. It'll be incredibly painful, but following these guidelines will establish the foundation through the exercise of disciplines to a better and more fulfilling life. So let's talk about it. You want Spartan economic conditions. You're probably going to have roommates. You want cheap eating, and you want to make sure you get at least 100 grams of protein per day, minimum. You look for cheap entertainment, like dollar board games from the Goodwill, minimal furniture and clothing, cheap travel, as cheap as possible, but you're going to work 60 to 80 hours a week. Yeah, that sounds like a lot. And sometimes we just don't have the skills to earn what we need to in 40 hours. But we don't care about what things should be. We understand what things are and what we need to do to get better. The second thing is to have brotherhood. I would recommend having 3 to 4 guys that are also in the suck, that you band together to challenge each other and live together if possible and share common goals, because iron sharpens iron. And when you're in it together, you have a team that's primed to win. The advancement path to go on to the next step is you want to gain skills through free and cheap education. You can go to the library. There's plenty of YouTube videos to help you out. There's all kinds of things that you can do for free or relatively cheap, like Skillshare. You also want to make sure to improve your physique, because your physique is an outer representation of your inner discipline. Now, here are the steps to level up to the next level. 1, you want $1,000 in liquid savings. That means in a savings account, not in investments. You want $500 a month in excess income above what you need. And you also want the ability to maintain that excess income on 60 hours a week or less. Once again, this phase sucks. People often struggle here for their entire lives without progressing because they're unwilling to put in the work and make the hard choices. Have you started connecting the dots on what separates the mental frames between the rich and everyone else? I'll give you a hint. It has to do with time. I'll spell it out later in the video. By making intentional choices, you could master your destiny and move on to the next phase, utility. In the utility phase, we focus on intentional decisions to improve quality of life, step by step. There are many pitfalls in this phase that people fall for and get stuck here or fall back down into the survival phase. I'll be sure to highlight these pitfalls for you so you aren't fooled. Generally speaking, you're going to maintain a lot of your economic conditions from the survival phase. Spartan living, really cheap food, working really hard. You want to make sure that you're working at least 60 hours a week, maybe 2 or more jobs. The big deal is to focus on net overall income, not hourly rate, for now. Now, be aware, if you're the kind of guy that's making these changes and doing this grind, you have this huge risk of being sought after for promotion. right now is probably not the time to take that promotion, because a lot of times that'll involve having more responsibility, and then you'll have less flexibility to have that second job that's supplementing your income. You also want to resist long-term relationships, because that'll go ahead and take away from your focus, and oftentimes you won't have the proper time in this phase of life to really focus on giving that relationship the proper time that it's due. Any excess time above 60 and below 80 hours a week can be channeled into a side hustle that can eventually overtake your job income. Ideally, you want it connected to a skill that can be developed for depth. But if you have to, by all means, go ahead and deliver pizzas, not a big deal. I did that for a few months. It happens. I needed to go ahead and build up savings. So do you. Also in the utility phase, I want to make sure that we set up 10% of net income for acquiring utility items to improve the quality of your life. Think minor appliances, conveniences which buy back your time for substantially less than it would take to make the same amount of money to buy that convenience. Next, set 10% of your net income to budget to save for bigger utility purchases like cars, major appliances, maybe a computer, or equipment to help level up your side hustle. Now, the advancement path for this requires you to set 5 to 10% of net income budgeted for training and education to improve your skills and abilities. This will unlock things that you really couldn't get from the free and cheap resources earlier. It's really important to invest in your education so that you can go ahead and get the skills you need to pay the bills. Another thing to advance, either you replace that second job with a side hustle income, or you find a position where 40 hours a week can completely replace that 60-hour-a-week grind that you had before. Remember, net income is the important part. It isn't about how many dollars you make per hour until it counts. When it counts is when it replaces everything else you got going on. And finally, you want to continue to improve your physique and work on your charisma, because oftentimes charisma is the defining characteristic that separates people in different stratas along the way. Now, here are the conditions to level up. You'll need 3 to 6 months of all expenses in liquid savings. This includes any premiums and deductibles on insurance policies. Start investing in purchasing cash-flowing assets. We'll talk more about that later. And maintain excess income on 40 hours a week. If you're going to have an extra job or side hustle at this point, it's primarily for the purpose of acquiring assets, which is going to separate you from the rest. The utility phase is a grind, but it's much better than barely surviving. So many people stop advancing in this stage and never make it forward. You absolutely can stop here, and it would be a lot better than barely surviving. But if you've put in the work to get here, you can ascend and reach for the next step. Have you discovered the secret yet? If you know it, don't spoil it for the people in the comments below. They need to come about it and discover it and harness the power of it for their benefit. Here's another hint. It's a pair of relationships between time and money. Now that you've conquered the utility phase, you are now a proud member of the middle class. Congratulations! Most Americans in the US make a living wage and make it to the subsistence phase, and they stop their climb. They get comfortable. They stop pushing and growing. They stop putting in the work to improve. What will you do? Next is the subsistence phase. In the subsistence phase, you've got enough to live a good life. You can afford most things you would want with just a little bit of discipline. This is where most of the middle class lives and stays for the rest of their lives. They live a life of enough. When you've been struggling through the survival and utility phases, the subsistence phase will seem like a cakewalk by comparison. It is that comfort that leads people to stop grinding and improving. What will you do when you get there? Here, your economic conditions can improve slightly. If your brotherhood is a major source of strength, maintain it. If not, this would be the time that solo living arrangements can make sense. Build an entertainment budget for yourself. I would recommend no more than 5% of your net income. Improve your food quality. You want to make sure that you eat 60% of your body weight in grams of protein per day to maintain muscle quality. I encourage you to live on less than 60% of your net income. Save or give away 10% and invest the last 30%. That's the key to unlocking the next steps of the process. This phase usually lasts the longest for people that are starting from nothing. If you started with a middle-class lifestyle, You're way ahead of the competition, but that's okay. You can apply these lessons too. Now, in terms of investing, the number one thing to be concerned with is that cash flow is king right now. You want to utilize some strategies to take equities and enhance your monthly income so that you can slowly but surely replace the income that you have to work for income that you get from your assets. This may be a time to buy a house or multifamily. I personally would recommend trying a house hack where you buy a duplex or a fourplex, you live in one unit and rent out the others so that you have additional cash flow. The important thing to look at is appreciating assets. That's things that go up in value over time, rather than people spending all their money on cars and fun things that are fun in the moment, but go down dramatically as soon as you buy them. For example, when you buy a car, brand new off the lot, as soon as you drive that car off the lot, on average, you lose 30% of the value. If you buy a $100,000 car, I don't want you to be losing 30 grand right away. Now, if you got the money to burn, by all means. I'm here to encourage you to make wise choices, and if that's a wise choice for you, go for it. Here's the advancement plan. This may be the time to start seriously considering dating, long-term relationships, maybe a marriage, if you're interested in doing that. You want to continue to develop skills with your education budget. Keep it at 5 to 10%. Because you're making more, that means you can spend more and get higher quality education and higher quality skills. I'd encourage you to scale your side hustles into profitable businesses if at all possible, and to improve and maintain your physique and start working on your charisma and your network. Because more often than not, from here, your network is a key driving force in what your net worth will be down the road. In order to level up to the next level, you want to make sure to have 1 times your annual total gross income in assets. And 2, you want to make sure that your savings and investment rate is about 50% of your net income. That seems really high, but when your assets are generating income for you, it makes things a lot easier. That's it. By completing the level up conditions of the subsistence phase, you're ready to transition into the upper class in terms of wealth. If you've done the work in terms of your charisma, network, skills, and physique, you'll be ready to transition into the upper class. Congratulations. If you are transitioning right now, you've accomplished more than the vast majority of Americans have. You built your character, discipline, and skills to become worthy of a better life. You've earned it. You don't need anyone's permission to live an amazing life. You've taken it, and you now own it. Have you figured out the relationships between time and money that separates the rich from the rest yet? Here's the answer. The rich have more money than time, so they spend money to get more time. Everyone else has more time than money. They use their time for money or leisure. No matter where you are in your grind, I wish you the strength and endurance to find your place. The forge is hot and ready. Bring your hammer and start swinging.